Welcome back, Steeler fans, to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by my colleagues, Will Massack. You know him as Bradshaw to Ben, and Corey Karbowski. You know him as Corey39. Will, do we have a beverage sponsor this week?
We do. We're back. We're off of the vitamin C diet, and this is a Slim Hazy from Peak Brewing.
All right.
It's a hoppy hazy low cal IPA. The low cal part of it, is irrelevant to me. I'm slim as can be, but for the heavyweight Justin Herbert down there, maybe it's a future. If only he drank beer, Jeremy, or it would be for Corey, but he's not a beer drinker.
Corey, not a beer drinker, huh? Well, so what if you're not a beer drinker? What is your drink of choice? We're going to go off script here a little bit, Steeler Fury fans. Drink of choice, sir.
I really am mostly a water drinker, but if you're gonna get me to drink, it's gonna be vodka.
It will be the purple drink. Will you be drinking the purple drink?
Oh God.
No, okay, sorry. Is
that the youth say, Will?
Is that what the youth say? Yeah. What did Martavis Bryant was in the news this week. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah, what was your answer, Corey? I didn't mean to step on your drink.
Oh, it's mostly water, but if I have to drink something, it'll be vodka, something hard, and not really, slow sipper or anything.
Where was that when I was offering the drinks around and you were not taking the answer? Anyway, whatever. Thank you to Peak Brewing for not sponsoring the show. We would like you to be. We talk about you a lot. So
anyway. Yeah. So I have to say, if I had to have a beverage of choice, I am a bourbon fan. Being here in Indiana, Kentucky is not far. So we have access to plenty of good bourbon here. I also was a liquor store manager for like 6 years. So
I can see that.
So I grew to acquire all manners of tastes or whatever. Honestly, there's nothing that I really, try that I'm thinking, this is, I could see this with this, or, I like something along the lines. Now, the one thing I do have a good nose for and taste for is cheap shit. I can't stand the cheap shit anymore. I can tell you right there. So.
What you have a nose for? You're like, you can identify this is some cheap shit.
Yeah.
Like that must come in handy when you're watching the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Also, I'm guessing because you were a liquor store manager that you're also proficient with a shotgun. That also might come in handy when you're watching the Steelers offense.
Yeah. Well, which one? The drink or the shotgun?
You could take something around the back of the barn.
Right.
Put it out of its misory.
Yeah.
The Steeler fans, perhaps.
Well, luckily, I was never in any situations where a shotgun was warranted. But I'm not going to lie, there were a few locations that were not in the best of places around the Indiana area. If we want to get into that, but we don't. We need to get back on topic here. This is not a show about.
My fault. Sorry.
We could definitely go into that. Believe it or not, Toast Our Boys. They won this past weekend. As a matter of fact, I want to point something out. I was the only one that predicted a Pittsburgh win. Just want to put that out there. Believe it or not, I was pretty close on the score, too. I believe I predicted 2017. It was 2016. So pretty dang close. Just tooting my horn. Will can't get on anymore because I actually put picks in the CBS pick.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? Me ahead of schedule and everything.
And shout out to Corey Karbowski. He's putting up a good fight to not finish last in the pool. So good week this week. But Jeremy, congratulations. I mean, and up next you'll be telling me your stop clock is right twice a day also. So
well,
we have guests on the show.
Yeah, right. Well, Will, as you know, you've been touting my winning percentage has been super high since I've only picked once this entire season, so it's assuredly to go down.
You'll probably come in and pick all 12 correctly, which is what is fine. Can we talk about let's talk about the Steelers' victory for a second.
Absolutely. Lots of fun things to watch. Will,
I think maybe I'm just starting to get numb to the fact that they seem like such hollow, stupid victories. Like, if the game is over and you're like, how did we win that game exactly? But I think actually this one has pretty clear components. From the Tennessee point of view, they could not pass protect. So the Steelers pass rush from Steelers perspective was very effective, especially early in the game. I felt like that was just like, you welcome to the NFL moment for a quarterback, because no matter what you think you have time to do, you just don't have enough time to do it. And despite that, they showed pretty well, and Tennessee probably had a chance to win that game, but they mismanaged the clock. It's like this, Corey. We keep talking about this, that the other team turns the ball over and can't manage the end of the games, and they just like demolish themselves while the Steelers are playing like rope-a-dope. So the strategy works very well against teams that aren't ready for prime time, and this was one of those occasions.
Yeah, definitely took advantage of the Tennessee offensive line. I mean, God, they kept going down throughout the game too. I think the announcers at one point said they aren't going to have players be able to come in to play offensive line at one point. I think every member outside of Aaron Brewer, their starting center, went down and left the game at one point. I think it was Skaronski maybe left the game permanently, or maybe that might have been Nicholas Petit Ferrer, as my buddy Wes pointed out today. He got put on IR. His season's done. So it's always nice when the Steelers' most expensive assets get out there and do their job. I'm just saying, money well spent.
It's true.
So, I mean, what else went right this game, Corey?
I always like to take a more player-focused point of view, but overall, we always knew that Chucks wasn't a great run blocker. I didn't think it would be as big of a difference with Broderick in there as it was. Now, I will say, if Broderick looks how he did at right tackle for, the rest of his career, that's going to turn out to be a hell of a pick because he had a phenomenal game over there. Now, we drafted him to be the franchise left tackle, all that. I've always been a big proponent of, I don't care whose side you're on, because there's good pass rushers on both sides of the ball now. So I really don't care what side you're on. But if he's a franchise right tackle, that's a perfectly fine outcome with me. Another person we got to start talking about a little more, I think, is Keanu Benton. He has been phenomenal on the interior of that defense. Looks like Germany was going to mention that. I'll let him get to that, but I do want to mention first Darnell Washington. 2 catches, 2 first downs, like 5 defenders that he's taken for him. So I know there's a little discussion on the Steelers Fury boards about Darnell Washington and his usage, but I feel like if he's just given the ball a little more, he's 2 for 2 on first down. So you guys can extrapolate that math over the course of a full season if he got, 10 targets a game or something.
Okay, gotcha.
We don't exactly have, Magic Johnson distributing the ball, So it's like they don't even use the guys that they have. Everybody's talking about bringing in new guys. Drives me crazy. Sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
No, you're good. I mean, honestly, guys, if we want any accurate take on the Pittsburgh Steelers from a ball player, I mean, just go talk to LeBron. After all, the Lakers are the Pittsburgh Steelers of the NBA, as he put it. So fuck you, LeBron. Hate that shit. But anyway, getting to Keanu Benton, he was kind of the guy I was gonna bring up. It's amazing what he's been able to do in his rookie year. Obviously started out rough. He's really come on here of late. He's been able to hold up in the running lanes, but he's really been able to get after the passer. I think we saw flashes of what he could do at the Senior Bowl, being able to get off the offensive lineman with his hands, get upfield with his quickness. Something you can see a whole lot of at Wisconsin, because he was more used as a run plugger there, allow their linebackers go make plays. As we know, we drafted a Wisconsin linebacker too. So we should know this, but his level of play is just going through the roof. And the fact that just kind of fast forwarding to the injury report here, the only 2 guys who did not practice as of Wednesday were Montravius Adams and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Benton is looking at a starting role. And if things go the way that they've gone for Broderick Jones, as where, Tomlin has said, he's earned an experience or an extended look at right tackle to see if he's going to be the guy there. I'm hoping the same gets afforded to Keanu Benton, because the kid's starting to really come on. I'd really like to see him there more full time. Anything else we should hit on from this past game, gentlemen?
Joey Porter Jr.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fine showing for him. I mean, like I said, the pass protection issues for Tennessee were so bad early in the game that it certainly helps your defensive backs look a lot better. You tend to miss your free safety and your lack of cornerback depth whenever you you don't have time to get rid of the football. But I felt like that Joey Porter, that's a matchup with a guy who isn't a big athlete, DeAndre Hopkins, but he's a really smart football player and very good at contested catches. So to almost entirely shut him down for a rookie showing, I thought that was pretty good.
And the one catch was against Porter in cover 3 on a hitch. So that's one of those routes where
That's
you
what you're
live with
giving.
it if they throw it. So, I mean, that's, Darius Rush, I think one thing people have a skewed perspective on is, dropped interceptions. If a guy is in position to make an interception, it's already a good play. It doesn't matter if they dropped it. Dropping an interception does not make it a bad play. That was an excellent play by Darius Rush. Now, was it the best decision by Levis? No. But Darius Rush flew up on that ball. That ball was not a given that Darius Rush was going to break it up.
No.
So I know a lot of people like Darius Rush coming out of the draft. Will was a big fan, I know, and there's a lot of guys on the board who talk him up.
Yeah.
But
he's also a man corner, and they had him out playing, like zone coverages.
One high safety in the middle, which was
good luck, man.
I guess if you have no Minka, 3rd and long, I guess it's not the worst thing to do in the world. But, if you start looking at it, Broderick's probably not going to play how he did last game. Porter's going to have a game where he gets, dinged up, get some bombs hit on him. Benton's going to have some games where he gets manhandled inside. But if you're looking at it right now, this is looking like a pretty good top of the draft. Herbig looks already good as a situational rusher already. There's other things that you can criticize the Steelers front office for, but it's looking like these early picks at least are playing very, very well as rookies.
Well, Corey, I hate to say this again, but you stole my thunder a little bit with Darius Rush getting the mention there. Honestly, for a guy who, we just signed just a few weeks ago off the Kansas City practice squad, he's come in and looked very competent. I know we alluded that, he's more of a man corner, not used to playing more zone and whatnot. But the little he has been very encouraging. This looks like a young kid. Obviously, we like the size and the speed. You mentioned hitting the draft picks out of the park. How about essentially hitting a 4th rounder that we signed off someone else's practice squad? I mean, this is a kid that I told my buddy Mitch, who's a huge Colts fan. When the Colts take him, I was like, this guy could have easily gone on day 2 because of his measurables and stuff. And that's where a lot of people had him. And the fact that Indianapolis cut him because of a numbers crunch, but it was not indicative of how he had played in the preseason. Obviously shown enough to where Kansas City signed him directly to their practice squad. We thought enough of him to sign him off a practice squad, a guy who had not had an NFL snap, and he's out there playing at a high level for us. So, I mean, kudos to this front office, sticking and, giving guys another chance. It's not very often you sign a guy up off someone's practice squad in the middle of the season and almost get immediate.
And let them, it could have been James Pierre out there,
Right.
That's something where you want to give him props for giving the young guy a chance.
Yeah. I mean, I wish the NFL in some ways were more like the NHL. I feel like the NHL, the bottom of the roster, they move those guys around. Like if you're not performing, they swap you out for somebody else. And I feel like the bottom of the NFL rosters, especially for the Steelers over the years, has been
Benny Snell football.
Yeah, it's been just pretty stagnant, and it's just certain guys seem to have a job for life, and the other guys can't catch a break. But I feel like if you're pretty smart, if you're whatever that, I don't know if it's pro personnel department that is dealing with guys that are on other teams, practice squads are getting cut. Like I don't know if it's that or they just have them as draft prospects, or whatever. But whoever's keeping tabs on those people, if you just kept tabs on the prospects that you like that sign with other teams, and or guys that are on practice squads, I think you can make a lot of hay with that at the bottom of your roster if you really try. And then when you have injuries and stuff like that, then you've got somebody to step in that isn't a total stiff. That's just like a guy that was like good on special teams, and so you have him on your team like Killebrew, right? Miles Killebrew or Robert Golden back in the day, or what's the linebacker that I tried to block his name out of my mind that went to Buffalo. Like guys that perfectly good special teamers, but when someone can't break out of special teams after they've been like a 7-year veteran of special teams, it tells me that they're probably not a guy that you want to have on the bottom of your roster, really. But it feels like, I feel some positive energy, particularly as it relates to defensive players. Makes you kind of wonder if like the offensive coaches from the coordinator on down are not quite as interested in that. They prefer continuity and guys that they know to the unknowns.
Well, I mean, I agree with that to an extent because I mean, you always hear of like the boys club. When it comes to it's like, oh, it's who you know and that gets you a job and everything. I mean, I think the same thing goes along for coordinators or whatever. There's guys that know their system that have tried, have been a part of their system there where it's like when they get hired somewhere else, it's like, hey, I want this dude because he knows exactly what I want. It's like, I mean, Nathaniel Hackett right now in New York, that guy for him is Alan Lazard. Lazard was in his system for 3 or 4 years. He obviously bombs in Denver. He gets a job with the Jets. Hey, also happens to be one of Aaron Rodgers' guys too. So
Isn't Randall Cobb there right now?
I think he is, but he's not playing. Maybe he's hurt. I don't know.
I'm not sure why.
Although honestly, if you're on a team with a quarterback like I just described earlier that isn't exactly Magic Johnson at distributing the football, you could be playing for all I know. How would I know?
right.
Like, Zach Wilson's thrown to like 3. He's probably the same 3 guys or the same 3 plays over and over again. So
Yeah.
I don't want to, I'm always the negative guy, and I don't want to cast a, cloud over our son right now.
Wait, you're negative? What does that make me? You're like sunshine and good vibes and like Kool-Aid. Hey, sorry.
Yeah.
I would be fine glossing over the George Pickens and Cole Holcomb thing, but I'm not sure about you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, but when it comes to Pickens, I think we've just kind of come to accept it at this point. I mean, Tomlin came out this week and said, I want guys that are passionate, that want the ball, that want to be great and all that. And, so far as we know it hasn't really caused any contention in the locker room.
Props to Deontay for being, the bigger person and, bringing him back up on Instagram, saying like, we believe in you, all that. Cause I mean, if you're Deontay Johnson, you could easily be pissed off. You see him sulking off in the videos. They see everything, but he was, the bigger person. It was like, we love Pickens, we all want the ball. It's just, he's still a young player. It's a maturity thing.
Yeah. I mean, and then, you mentioned Cole Holcomb, now out for the season with a knee injury. Like,
Gruesome.
Yeah. And for the love of God, it would be friendly fire. It wasn't even one of their dudes. It was one of our guys. I think it was Keanu Neal. Could be wrong on that. But it's just, you hate to see that because was he the greatest thing out there? No. But he was pretty good. He was calling
good role play. Good role players. You need good role players.
He's probably the best linebacker we've had in there since Shazier, which, not a high bar. Not a high bar at all. But how many times did you look up? And this wasn't like a Miles Jack thing last year where it was like, oh, there's this 10th tackle. It's him running behind a crosser again. The Holcomb made a lot of 1 or 2 yard stops. You didn't see his guy getting targeted a ton in coverage. He's just solid. Best thing we've had since Shazier. So it is going to be a loss, but
absolutely.
It doesn't sound like we're going to see that much more Mark Robinson from what
we were a little. Here's the thing: the Steelers were a little deeper at the other linebacker spot, right? They have like pretty much 3 guys that can kind of play that spot. But now you're going to ask Quan Alexander to sort of do more of what Cole Holcomb was doing versus what he was doing already. But I think Quan Alexander can play a little bit, but it definitely, like, I'm not sure it's all sorted out as well as it was coming into last week. I guess the newfangled analytics type people who tell you that inside linebacker is like the least important position on the defense will be, happy to point out over the next few weeks if the Steelers continue to play well. But they have issues on their defense. They're not they're not completely perfect, and I don't think they're like a top 10 defense, but they're solid right now. I mean, it's very hard to poke holes in them at least versus most of the teams in the league. So we'll see what happens when they play some better teams.
And I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Presley Harvin, 4 punts for 200 yards. That's an average of 50 yards a punt. 3 punts inside the 20 out of the 4. That's a game.
Yeah, he definitely rebounded from a shitty week prior.
Yes.
So yeah, good to see him bounce back for sure. As our resident special teams expert would always like to point out. So
There is always a little bias. I will say I'm much less inclined to mention the bad games than the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, you guys stick together. I know how it is.
Yeah.
Well, Will alluded to it. There are some holes on the defense, and that's where I'm going to start out our matchups we need to look out for as the Steelers get to play host to the Green Bay Packers this week. We mentioned no Cole Holcomb, so that forces Quan Alexander into more playing time. That forces Elandon Roberts, maybe into some coverage.
Nah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, hey, I gotta mention it. Kind of a dark horse candidate that I think could really hurt that position is tight end Luke Musgrave. When this guy is healthy, he runs routes like almost 80% of the time he's on the field, which is through the roof for a tight end, let alone the fact that he's a rookie tight end. So I did round up on statistics for you that are really into the statistic thing, but he is long, he's athletic, and he can run. Something that's always plagued the Steelers when it comes to tight ends. So that's my matchup to watch for. You need to make sure we put the clamps down on Luke Musgrave. I think he's just one guy the Packers could use to take advantage of, some of those holes that Will mentioned on our defense. Will, with that, how about another matchup we should be on the lookout for?
Well, I mean, Green Bay to me is like a funny team. Like they're a team in transition, obviously, but they went kind of a large stretch of the season looking sort of like dull and moribund, if you know what I mean. Like they just didn't really look like they had a lot of zing to their team. And then there's last week where they looked suddenly like they were a little bit more inspired, and like maybe they're rounding into form. It's hard to say. So with that in mind, I mean, it's like I don't want to overreact to last week, but I feel like maybe there's a little bit of hope for their quarterback, right? So I guess I'll start there. Feels like I would have said 3 weeks ago that this matchup really favored the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I feel like the passing game for the Packers might have a little bit more life in it than we might have thought a few weeks ago, and Christian Watson making plays a little bit. I still not sure about their depth doing that, or about their quarterback's ability to really do that against a good team. But I find it interesting to think that they might spend a little bit more time attacking the Steelers with the passing game, whereas they were living by the run game a month ago.
Court?
I didn't really have a good place to work this one in, and you guys, I've already posed this question to, but this is the matchup that I'd like to propose. Who would you rather have? A quarterback with 1,490 yards, a 6-4 touchdown to interception ratio, or a quarterback with 1,727 yards and a 10-5 touchdown to interception ratio?
I won't steal your thunder since I got it on earlier this week, but
well, the one with a significantly better touchdown interception ratio and about 300 more yards would be former Steelers third stringer Josh Dobbs, who, if you told someone at the beginning of the year that Josh Dobbs would be having a notably better season than Kenny Pickett, even the most cynical Steelers fans probably would have laughed you out the door. So that's just some food for thought for where Kenny is as a quarterback currently. But, getting to a real matchup and not just,
an imaginary one.
Yeah, a little bit of Kenny hatred. I'm going to say Jordan Love versus our coordinators, Mike Tomlin, Terrell Austin. So one thing that the Packers have had significant issues with, and I've just seen this randomly on Twitter, I couldn't give you a source, but they have been really bad against the blitz. Now, I don't have the stats in front of me. I would be willing to guess that the Steelers are among the lower 10 teams in the league in terms of blitzing. I feel like we never blitz. Now, when you have the pass rush winners that we do, probably don't need to. But if a team sucks against the blitz, you should probably blitz against them. So I'm going to say, let's see if Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin lean into that and turn up the heat a little more. It might also help with your middle linebacker situation, at least for a week, to keep a little stress off of those guys. It's a lot easier for those guys to blitz than to, run with some of those tight ends in coverage. So that's going to be the big matchup for me.
Yeah, kind of building off of that. A nice segue there. Those inside linebackers better watch out for Aaron Jones. He came back last week looking like the old Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
That Aaron Jones can be a very big nightmare for what Pittsburgh likes to do.
By the way, Jeremy, you can thank me. I have started every time we talk about the Packers in the show for like the last 6 years. I begin my discussion with Aaron Jones being like a vital piece of what they do. So I left that for you tonight.
I appreciate that. This one's a little twofold because I already had mentioned the inside linebackers. They're going to need to be on their A game when it comes to Aaron Jones, just because he's such a threat to take any ball he catches the distance, really, especially when he catches it out of the backfield. But alluding to what Corey said about the blitzing, our edge rushers, I think, should have an absolute field day against this Green Bay team. Rasheed Walker is an absolute turnstile at left tackle. He never gets out of his stance quick enough for the speed rushers. He gets bullied by power all the time. Like, it sets up Alex Highsmith for a really good matchup on that side. And then, honestly, TJ Watt should give, I think it's Zach Tom at right tackle. He should give him all he's asking for, too. Tom's one of the more athletic guys, but he's not one of the more sturdier guys. He does not have much of an anchor. I expect our edge guys just to absolutely go off. And really, the offensive line for the Packers in general, not the team they used to be of a few years ago. That they have really fallen off, and that's where most of their success has, or the lack of success the last few years has really been attributed to that offensive line. When it comes down to it, that offensive line is not held up, whether it was for Aaron Rodgers, whether it was for Jordan Love this year. That offensive line is an issue. I think we take big time advantage of it this week.
And just to be clear, Josh Nijman, they don't think he's going to play. I don't know what the status is.
So I was looking earlier, and
he didn't practice today. That I know.
Yeah, he didn't practice, but right now Walker and Tom are listed ahead of Nijman. So
yeah, well, I mean, let's put it this way: even if they get there, even if Nijman starts, it's not necessarily solving the problem.
Right.
So yeah. I have a funny Aaron Jones story. So I'm not sure. Will probably remembers. This is when he was in like his 40s. Back in 1988, we drafted Aaron Jones, a D tackle, out of Eastern Kentucky.
That's correct.
Notable because he was the only senior player who had not been a part of a Senior Bowl game or didn't do the combine. It was one of the two, some weird stat like that, to ever be drafted. I think it was the combine. He's the only player to not be invited to the combine and drafted in the first round, I think, in NFL history, as long as the combine's been a thing.
Oh.
And so he is actually from Orlando, Florida. Back in, when he was in high school, he went to one of my rival high schools. And so I used to see him around a ton. He coached me in a couple things. And I remember looking him up, and some of the recent articles, this was back in 2014, I would have been like, oh, there's another Aaron Jones. He plays at UTEP, and he's a running back. Well, back in 2014, Aaron Jones had 1,600 yards and 14 touchdowns. So I might have been one of the earliest, people aware, one of the first people aware of Aaron Jones when he was a sophomore at UTEP, because sixth grade Corey was browsing the internet about this guy who coaches him around.
We were on a collision course. We were ready to run into each other, man, because I mean, Aaron Jones was my poster child for guy, I just started looking for guys who are really good players on terrible teams, because I think those are, if you want to talk about the who is undervalued in the draft, often are guys that play on terrible teams, even in good conferences. So the guys that play for Vanderbilt or for Northwestern or whatever, right? But especially for bad, mid majors, whatever you want to call them, group of 5 teams, because those guys tend to fall on the radar. Aaron Jones was great there. Roy Robertson Harris, like the guys who were really good on bad teams translate very well to the NFL. They're still really good players, and now suddenly they're on a good team surrounded by talented guys. So imagine if you can stand out that much on a team where you don't have 2 all pros, on either side of you. Like that's really the key with a guy like that. But yeah, I really like Aaron Jones. Injuries, have been an issue for him as they are for a lot of running backs. But yeah, he's a great 2-way running back, like the kind of the ideal low cost, mid round draft pick. And you don't have to spend a first round pick, and you get this guy that's very adept in both the pass and run game. He's a good tool.
With that being said, I remember when Aaron Jones first came out, I wasn't really on his train until I think it's former Steelers offensive line coach Lance Zierlein, I think, writes down there, or maybe it's his son. Can't remember.
It's his son. Yeah,
it's his son. Excuse me, or whatever. But obviously I recognized the last name. And I was like, who's this Aaron Jones kid? Plays for UTEP. I've never watched a UTEP game in my life. But yeah, it's a good testament, where you can find players anywhere. You just have to be able to go find them and look. So with that being said, do we have any other matchups we should be on the lookout for this week? That's fine. No big deal. We've got
I would say that the third running back versus the Steelers' third best cornerback. I'm not sure exactly how that will translate for the Steelers, but while I don't necessarily think the top guys for the Packers are really performing at like top wide receiver level, they have some really good depth. Dontavian Wicks from Virginia has actually shown really well. Like he's a fairly polished player for a guy that's a third or fourth on the depth chart. So that could that could be a tough matchup for a Steelers.
Chandon Sullivan.
Yeah, for Shannon Sullivan, and who's not the best cover guy. He's kind of like he's in there because he's an all around. He can do a little blitz, play a little against the run, be physical, but he's not necessarily a guy that's going to be a great matchup for passing. So that to me is like, I don't think there's much chance of the Packers putting up a lot of points on the Steelers, but I would say that is a matchup that they could make some hay with.
You mentioned Dontavian Weeks. I'm gonna go ahead and throw another guy out there, Jaden Reed, the rookie from Michigan State. That guy was probably one of the better all around wide receivers to come out in this draft class, just with combination of routes, great hands, good speed, all of that. So just that combination alone, when you start looking down the Steelers depth chart at corner, with a guy who's very well rounded, probably means he's gonna win some matchups there. So, that's another wide receiver to be on the lookout for. With that being said, there are some big NFL matchups this week that we should probably pick and get some games on here. Corey, we're going to start with you. First off, probably one of the bigger games of the week, especially since it's in our own division. The Cleveland Browns visit the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are at home and they are favored by 6. What are your thoughts on this game?
That is 6 points is a lot of points to cover. It's almost too big because I really like the Ravens. I've liked the Ravens for a while. I think that they've got the OC that I was banging the door down for all off season. And I'm more of a Lamar fan than a lot of other people. They have Keaton Mitchell breaking out right now from the looks of it. All of us are big Zay Flowers fans. Their DC is going to get a ton of head coaching looks in the offseason. But that Cleveland defense is pretty legit, and that's a big spread. I could easily see this game being kind of like a, classic AFC North slugfest where it ends up with a narrow win. So I'm going to take Baltimore to win, not to cover.
All right, Will?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet. As good as Cleveland's defense is, but Baltimore's defense is not far behind. So
I think statistically they're better. Actually, this was the stat. Baltimore's allowing 13.8 points a game right now. 13.8.
Well, in DVOA, Cleveland is number 1 at at 32% better than the average NFL defense.
Wow.
The Ravens are second, 28.8% better than the average defense. So they're close. Let's put it that way.
AC North, baby.
And playing at home, I take Baltimore to win for sure all day long. The cover part of it, I don't know. It feels a little bit like a 3-point game, but I have a feeling that if either team is going to have trouble scoring, it will be Cleveland rather than Baltimore. Like Baltimore will do what it does. Cleveland may have a little more trouble. I'm not really, they played better last week on offense, but I'm not really buying Deshaun Watson and having everything all smoothed over again. Like give it a few weeks before I can really buy into them fully.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up right there. I'm still not a believer in Deshaun Watson. We have not seen, the guy that was traded for 3 first-round picks, guaranteed 200 and I think it was $40 million.
Completely guaranteed.
Yeah, completely guaranteed.
The greatest deal in the NFL history.
Yeah, thank God no one was dumb enough to follow it up this offseason with a bunch of new quarterback extensions doing the exact same thing. But that's where I leave it off right there. Deshaun Watson is not the same Deshaun Watson anymore. He's good, but he's not great like he used to be. Like he is what drove Houston. Like right now, he's more of like a complimentary piece. I mean, we've seen PJ Walker come in there and look pretty comparable as to where the Ravens right now are playing the best football, maybe in the entire NFL. They're putting up lots of points. They're playing great defense. So not only am I taking the Ravens to win, I'm taking them to cover. I just think the Ravens right now have what's working on offense. That they put up more points fluidly than Cleveland does. It still feels like Cleveland is sometimes searching offensively for where they want to go and what they want to do on offense. So I'm taking the Ravens here with the spread.
Well, something is you see how many teams around the NFL are rolling with these rookie quarterbacks right now. I think me and Will were one of us sent it. It's like 33% of the starters this week are rookies. Do you recall in the offseason, Lamar was basically going to be given away. And there was this big collusion. And I'll say that's what it was, because I've never seen something where multiple teams were putting out statements that they were not going to pursue Lamar Jackson.
Right.
I'm just a little curious on what those teams are talking about right now as some of them start absolute no names,
Right. Well, okay. Since you've mentioned it, I'm going to put a stat out there before we move on to our next game. So the Giants are going to be starting rookie Tommy DeVito. He is the 10th rookie quarterback to start this year. And that's the most rookie quarterbacks that have started in the NFL since 1950. It's almost been 75 years since this many rookie quarterbacks have started a game in their rookie.
But here's the most ridiculous part. If I had named 10 quarterbacks before the season that I thought were the best 10 prospects that might have a chance to start a game this year, maybe 5 of them have started.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like they're dipping into like guys that have no business starting in the NFL.
Clayton Tune
might be, but he's not even the worst guy. Tommy DeVito, give me a break.
DeVito was terrible at Illinois.
Any draft analyst across Twitter, any article writer, I don't know if any of them had Tommy DeVito making a roster.
Yeah. No.
But he's from Syracuse, and he's in New York, so it's all good. Tanner Morgan, Minnesota, with the Vikings. It's just really easy. You just take the 5-year senior from your local university.
I tell you, that worked for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Right. With that being said, we should probably pick a few more games here.
We should.
Our matchup. Another good one this week. The Lions are traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. The Lions are the favorite here. They are favored to win by 3. Will, let's start with you.
I have been trying this year to pick the better team rather than like go with gut calls. But every once in a while, I got to throw one in that just feels like I don't feel like the better team is going to win for whatever reason. I'm picking the Chargers. I think Detroit's better, but they're sort of at a point where they're sort of comfortably 6-2, and they I'm not sure that they have a lot of competition necessarily for their division, and or for like playoff seeding. They're probably not going to end up with like a top seed getting the bye, and they're probably not going to lose their division. And it feels like the Chargers are desperate. So I'm going to say the Chargers seem to be playing a little bit better at the moment, and that playing at home, even though there may be more Detroit fans in the stands, that the Chargers will figure out a way to eke out victory.
All right, Corey.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on this one, Will. I just something in my gut saying the Chargers. I think they're playing a little better. I also believe they get Eckler back this week,
He's
which
been back the last two.
that's right, because Joshua Kelly was their big guy for the beginning of the season, which was, and that actually looking at their record coincides with a lot. They scored 24, 17, 17, and then they, granted versus the Bears, they put up 30, but then 27 against that Jets defense. That's not a small task. That's
Nope.
a really good defense. So, I think I just like the Chargers a little more. It's Detroit going to the West Coast. They can kind of rest on their laurels a little bit. The
It's
Chargers
Jared
aren't
Goff's
in the playoffs.
homecoming, man.
The Chargers aren't in the playoffs right now. I mean, they're behind all the AFC North teams. So even if they're second in, what was perceived to be a pretty solid AFC West, they need to win games because, it's what the AFC North teams do. They win games, good defense, and then they get, blown out in the playoffs by the Chiefs and the Bills.
Yep. So hate to say it, but we're all taking the Chargers here. I've been lucky as where the Chargers have been on the primetime game here recently, so I've been able to catch them a lot. They were on Thursday Night Football 2 weeks ago with them going down to the Saints, on Monday Night Football this week past the Jets. You know what the biggest difference is? The Chargers are healthy. Bosa is healthy. He's playing like a man possessed right now. Khalil Mack still killing it.
Derwin James.
About to say Derwin James is back, so the secondary is starting to look more like they were. The offensive line is healthy too. The only guy they're missing is their starting center, Corey Lindsey, because of some weird heart issue. If not, he'd be out there playing. This team is playing better too. Their defense has really come alive over the last few weeks. I know they haven't exactly played Murderer's Row, but they're starting to get confidence, and confidence is the dangerous thing this time of the year as teams push to make runs. Chargers are that team. They're pushing to make their run, so I'm going with the Chargers. Last one before we get to the Steelers here, I'll start this off. The 49ers are traveling to Jacksonville. This is probably everyone's big game of the week. You've got two highly favored, one highly favored NFC team over a highly favored AFC South team. Like I said, 49ers are favored by 3. This is a tough one, but I'm going with the 49ers. I think with them coming off the bye, getting a little healthier, Deebo Samuel's expected to play this week. He's been at every single practice so far this week. Another week for Christian McCaffrey to kind of get right, just heal up. Teams off the bye week can be pretty deadly, not to mention they're extremely well coached. Defensively, I expect him to kind of be back up there too. Brock Purdy settled down a little bit. Stop pressing so much, just taking what they give you. This team's good enough to win. So I like the 49ers this week, despite Jacksonville being on, I believe, a 6-game winning streak. So
is that really true? Oh, cow.
Yeah. Throw it out to you, Corey.
I feel like this is a bit of an equalizer game. The Jags are on a 6-game win streak. Not sure how many more of those you can get, but the 49ers, I feel like the 49ers on a 3-game skid's more surprising than the Jags on a 6-game win streak. You guys might disagree with that, but I'm having trouble seeing the 49ers fall to 5-4. They're a really good team. They have that Chase Young pickup, that's a big time pickup. That is a stacked defensive line. And I really think that this is where the Jags kind of, get caught, I guess is what you could call it. But, the win streak has to die at some point. This is a really good 49ers team. I think they break the 3-game skid. Coming off a bye week 2 is a bit of a reset. So I'm going to go with the 49ers here.
All right, Will?
Yeah, I'm also picking the 49ers. I guess Trent Williams is still not supposed to play. Which is a huge deal, but
Mhm.
they do seem to be getting a little healthier, and for much the same reasons that Corey said, it sort of feels like a reverting to the mean a little bit for both these teams. Very unlikely that San Francisco is going to continue to lose games. They're way too talented for that, and Jacksonville's had a, but they're probably not going to win 15 games in a row either.
Agreed. So we've done a lot of agreeing this episode. That's not
That's weird, man. It's
Yeah.
it's our brains are fried from having to watch this what the Steelers do on offense for 3 quarters.
Mentioning that Steelers offense, that brings us to our 5-star matchup of the week. The Packers are headed to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Steelers are favored by 3 at home. I'll tackle this one first. I think this is a big game for Pittsburgh. I just think we have a lot of things that are feeding into what we would like to do. We like to have these close games. Jordan Love is super inconsistent from week to week. Not that Kenny Pickett isn't. At this point, his stats are down last year, especially from accuracy standpoints. But it just kind of feels like this game is feeding into what Pittsburgh wants to do. The run defense has been improving slightly with Keanu playing better. Like I said earlier, I expect the pass rush to really take off this week. If anything, it's up to the offense. The offense has got to put up points. I think we do put up just enough points. I don't think we're going to have like an out party or anything, but I'm going with Pittsburgh 23-10 this week. We'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. First of all, I I think the Steelers not only will win this game and should win this game, but they really do have to win this game. I mean, they have a lot of tougher opponents left in the second half, and if they're going to have a hope of finishing, never had a losing season and continue to get 9 wins, this one has to be in the win column. It's a team that they're better than, and they're playing at home, and there's just nothing really like scary about the Packers. They're not a horrible football team, but they're also not really particularly dynamic. They're sort of like they play a little bit like the Steelers, except for they don't even have like this couple of studs mixed in. So I expect the Steelers to win this game. But that all being said, has there ever been a better trap game, in the NFL? It's like, think about what's happening the next 2 weeks after this for the Steelers in terms of the two division opponents with Cleveland and Cincinnati, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be circled on the calendar, right? So this would be an opportunity for them to start slowly. So I wouldn't be surprised about a slow start, but I just feel like they're better than the Packers. Another thing of note is Kenny Pickett has he is one shy of the NFL record for most game-winning drive or fourth quarter comebacks, excuse me, for a player in his second year, a quarterback in his second year. So with 9 games remaining and the way the Steelers like to play, getting off to a slow start might be something to look out for. So, yeah, it's like could I imagine Kenny Pickett holding that record at the end of the season? Yes, I could if he stays healthy. So I will take the Steelers though without a fourth quarter comeback to win, probably not as close as the score sounds, 23-16 over the Green Bay Packers.
All right, Corey, send it out to you.
One thing I wanna mention, and both of you guys kind of touched on it with Kenny's comebacks. We all do our fair share of dumping on Kenny, but I was curious when Tomlin talked about they asked him about Kenny, and he was like, I don't care what he does in the first 3 quarters, look what he does in the fourth. And there's some validity in what he's saying. Kenny has the second best in QBRs, it's a whatever stat, but he has the second best QBR out of any quarterback in the league in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's worth something. We like to dunk on him. We like to, we find all sorts of things to pick on him for. But that is a stat that does mean at least something. And there's a reason why we do end up coming out on top with a lot of these comebacks. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to go back and check the old podcast, but I feel like a lot of these times where I'm picking the Steelers to lose, we end up winning. So I think the Texans game might be the only game, and then 49ers. I think I picked the 49ers for us to beat them. So the Texans game was the only one I nailed when I said we'd lose. So regardless of what my actual head thinks, I'm going to say that the Steelers lose 21-17 and hope that the forces that keep working against my picks on the podcast keep going.
This reverse psychology.
No, it's like reverse the jinx. It's like going. This is like you're Costanzaing this to death, man. Jesus, you're overthinking.
So
if it gets us wins, it gets us wins. Will.
Right on.
So there's only one stat that truly matters going into this game. Can you guys name the stat? That's fine. It was this big special announcement that came out on Tuesday.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Steelers are 3-0 when wearing the block throwbacks. So that's the only thing that matters. We're in the block uniforms and the wins in the bag, baby. I don't. So
those should be our normal uniforms. Just make the switch already. They're better. You can pick other throwbacks, go back to the Bumblebees, but the standard uniform should be block letters.
Ironically enough, we were 3-0 in the Bumblebee jerseys too. I think the alternate jerseys have it.
I swear Ben had over 400 yards every time he wore the Bumblebee.
Well, he had 5 wearing it once, that's for sure.
Yeah, I already say
that's that game. The best game maybe of all time for any quarterback, let alone Ben. He was in the Bumblebees against the Colts.
Yeah, Colts. I was about to say that was a Colts.
We had 500 yards, 6 touchdowns, and it was like it was not a game where he was just like, pumping stats. They needed almost all of that to win the game. So
right. Well, and then not to mention that it was either the week before or the week after where he did the exact same thing to the Baltimore Ravens.
6 more touchdowns against the Ravens. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an incredible 2-game stretch for Ben. I'd love it to see, Kenny put on half of that, on a week-to-week basis.
Kenny, I'm not even being sarcastic. Has Kenny ever hit 250?
I'm just about to ask that same question. That's funny.
Like not even 300, just 250 is all
I'm looking right now. I got it in front of me, and I can tell you the answer is
235 was his highest last year or this year, and last year he hit 265. Oh, he hit 327 versus Baltimore when he threw the ball 52 times to net us 3 points. So
no, he threw. Let's see. This is Kenny Pickett, right? Yeah, he threw for 327 against Buffalo.
3 points, 327. Maybe yards aren't everything.
Right.
Not in that kind of game. There's a lot of garbage time involved in that game.
For sure. Well, thank you again, gentlemen, for joining us here for another episode at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Coleman, known as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by the best hosts I can get, Will Masek, him as Bradshaw to Ben, and Corey Karbowski, Corey 39. Thank you, gentlemen, for another week here, and go Steelers. Beat this kind of an old school matchup, so let's bring out an old school win.
Go Steelers, and thanks, Corey. If you pay, thanks, Jeremy. If you paid a little bit more, you probably could get some better analysts. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, well that would have to come from that non-existent budget I have too.
Oh, the non-existent budget. Right? Go get them, kids.
Go get them.